Shemel Shine. Yahweh Shemel
So
Shine.
special.
Barakatah Yahweh Shine. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shine.
Psalm 30. I will extol thee, O Lord, for thou hast lifted me up, and hast not made my foes to rejoice over me. O Lord my God, I cried unto thee, and thou hast healed me. O Lord, thou hast brought up my soul from the grave. Thou hast kept me alive, that I should not go down to the pit.
Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rechak, Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Micah, the first chapter, and dealing with Micah. When we look him up here, I pulled up the timeline. You can see that he was right around the same time as prophets like Isaiah, right, Hosea, Nahum, and so during the latter end of the Northern Kingdom, in which I believe he was there, right, when the Northern Kingdom ended up getting taken over by the Assyrians, besieged, and then deported out of their land. In fact, he also prophesied against them of the impending judgment that would come. And during the time of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, as we're going to read here, Micah was pretty much there around that time. So he prophesies against the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom, and it's sort of a mix, right, of judgments, but also hope, because the Lord will have mercy upon Israel. Now, it doesn't really mention the, like say the lineage per se of Micah, but based on the the geographic region where he is placed, which is around the region of Judah. I believe it's like southwest of Judah, somewhere between the border of the Philistines and the lowlands, as they call it, of the cities of Judah. So it's likely that he might have been a Judite. But anyway, here we are in the book of Micah, chapter 1, verse 1. And in here, Micah basically speaks concerning the wickedness, right? He's given this warning or this message from the Lord that he has seen concerning what the Lord is going to do against the Northern Kingdom for their wickedness, mainly in idolatry, but also the calamities that will befall the Southern Kingdom for following in their ways. Now, Micah uses wordplay, right? He uses poetic verbiage when describing or constructing his lamentation here, and so oftentimes I might refer to the NLT, right, which makes the wording a bit easier to understand. But this is the book of Micah, chapter 1, verse 1. Destruction in Israel and Judah. The word of the Lord Yahweh that came to Micah, the Morasthite, in the days of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. So let's look up here that term, which here it's not, Morasthite is not a nationality. It's based on his geographical location where he was. I believe that's Mao Rosh Thaya, possession of Gath. Okay. And which is a portion, as it says, it's partial, which is probably the first half of that term or phrase, possession of Gath. But it says here, an inhabitant of Moresheth, the prophet Micah. Okay, so going back to Micah 1, in the first verse. In the days of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, which he saw concerning Samaria and Jerusalem. Okay, so this is the vision or the message that he received concerning what would befall the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom. Hear, O ye people, hearken, O earth, and all and all that therein is, right? Which is to say, everybody should pay attention and listen up to the message that he is about to deliver. And let the Lord Yahweh be witness against you, the Lord from his holy temple, right? So listen up and hear the witness that the Lord is going to bear against you, because the Lord has been watching and seeing all the iniquity that has been going on in the land. For behold, the Lord Yahweh cometh forth out of his place, and will come down and tread upon the high places of the earth. And the mountains shall be molten under him, and the valleys shall be cleft. Now, this is going into, because Micah did see, like the various other prophets, different points in time, right? Some very, very far into the future, some more immediate to their time. But this is going into the return of the Lord, right? As it's synonymous with Zechariah 14 as well, about the mountains basically melting and cleaving, which are a part of the destruction that's going to come when the Lord makes his return, right? So as it says, he's going to tread upon the high places of the earth, and the mountains shall be molten under him. Now, molten meaning it's going to melt, right? So if you type in here the word, or if we look up the word molten, right, it says here, I believe that's masas, but it says to dissolve or to melt, right? And we know that in the scriptures, right, you have the symbolic sense of the word mountain, which represents like a body of rulership, a government, and then you have the physical sense, which represents actual physical mountains or geographical regions, which will be in both sense, right? In both senses of the word will happen when the Lord comes back, right? So when he sends Yahweh Shai back, at least when his chariots and everything, this you are going to have this as part of the destruction, right? Mountains being, burned up, which is going to be by the fire the Lord comes with, right? It says, and the valleys shall be cleft, meaning they're going to be, broken up, because that's what cleft means, and wax before the fire, or Salakia, as wax before the fire. So when you put wax near or in the presence of fire, what does it do? It melts. And as the waters that are poured down a steep place, which is like a waterfall. Okay, so it's whenever you hear really about that judgment or the future destruction of the Lord, and it immediately sort of references fire, you already know that there's some indication here of that future judgment, because this was a very recurring theme in the scriptures. Verse 5, for the transgression of Jacob is all this, and for the sins of the house of Israel. So all this is going to happen, or all this is happening as a result of the transgression of Jacob and the sins of the house of Israel. What is the transgression of Jacob? Is it not Samaria? And what is the high places of Judah? Are they not Jerusalem? So the transgression of Jacob, which here is referring mainly to, the northern kingdom, but, both tribes or both kingdoms were in the land at the time anyway. But he's saying, where's the source of this transgression? Is it not Samaria? Because Samaria was the capital of the northern kingdom, but it was also a high place for idolatry. Okay, there was a lot of, idol worship going on over there. And it was spreading and permeating throughout Israel. And what are the high places of Judah? Now, the high places were attributed to places where Israelites would build shrines, right, and altars to other gods or other idols, and then go and worship there and offer sacrifices there and so on. Okay, so what are the high places of Judah, or the places of iniquity of Judah? Are they not Jerusalem? Because it got to the point where even in Jerusalem, which is a hill country, they were doing these things, right? They set up groves, they set up altars, and then they were committing idolatry over there. So because of that, as Micah is saying, because of these transgressions is the reason why the Lord is going to bring this judgment. Verse 6, therefore I will make Samaria as an heap of the field. Now, the word heap here is going into ruins, right? A heap of ruins. And the visual is when you are, say, preparing a body, right, or land to then, plant or whatever, you gather out the stones from it. Okay, and that gathering of the stones, you eventually pile it up so it becomes a heap of like stones or rocks or ruins. So the visual here is the Lord is saying, I'm going to make Samaria like that heap of stones that's been gathered, to the side somewhere. Now, this is going to be because they're going to be destroyed, right? The walls are going to be broken down. The cities are going to be broken down. And eventually this was fulfilled when the Lord sent the Assyrians against the northern kingdom. You can read up on that when you look up the siege of Samaria. It says here, and as plantings of a vineyard. So once again, when you are going to plant, right, say in a vineyard, you would have to clear out any stones or anything and make the land bare so that you can then plant. So that's the analogy here to say that the Lord is going to make their land bare, right, by destroying it and leveling it, and then removing them from it. So it's just using, the processes of certain things. In this case, planting, for example, but to describe the state that Samaria would be in when the Lord starts to bring that judgment upon them. And I will pour down the stones thereof into the valley, right? So that heap, I'm going to roll it down into the valley, and I will discover the foundations thereof, which is, in other words, re-emphasizing the point above, right? When you discover, you make bare, or you make visible the foundations thereof. The foundations are usually hidden by what's built on top. So in order to discover or see the foundations, you have to break down or destroy what was built on top. Right. And so that's what the Lord is saying here. He's going to destroy Samaria via judgment, in this case, by bringing the Assyrians against it. So verse 7, it says, and all the graven images thereof shall be beaten to pieces. Right. Their idols, which are the graven images, are going to be beaten to pieces. And this is something also that the Assyrians used to do. Right. They would do one of two things. They would either destroy the idols of a nation that they conquered, to show that those nations' idols were nothing before them, and that their gods or their idols were, above all. And sometimes they would take the idols with them as captives as well. So as it says here, all the graven images thereof shall be beaten to pieces, and all the hires thereof shall be burned with fire. Now the hires are going into like the wages, right, or the treasures or riches that they were paid or that they gained, and it's going to describe how they got it. Right. It says here, and all the idols thereof will I lay desolate. So the Lord's going to have those idols destroyed. For she gathereth it of the hire of an harlot, and they shall return to the hire of an harlot. So now the hire of an harlot, right? You had two kinds. You had one, which was like a harlot is a prostitute. A regular prostitute, she would be paid money, and then she would do her due hire, right? The hire is the money you would pay her, for engaging in activities with her. And then there were temple prostitutes. And with that, which was mainly a Canaanite practice, but Israel ended up adopting it. What they would do is they would have sex as a ritual, and that was, in their belief, known to stimulate the gods, which would then lead to the gods making the land more fertile. But in order to engage in that rite, you would pay, right? So that hire would be the money or the treasures or whatever was offered to be paid to engage in this year. And so what Israel was doing by committing idolatry was likened onto basically them being a harlot, right? Or making money from prostitution, or like playing that role of a harlot. And in the sense of them committing idolatry, you would have the worshipers, right, that were following these idols. They would come and bring offerings, right? And they would bring gold, they would bring silver, they would bring, sacrifices as offerings to the shrines and to the altars. And since that act of idolatry was likened onto the act of a whoredom, the higher here would be like the offerings that were brought of the people. So, as it's saying here, for she gathered it of the hire of an harlot. So the money that was being made through this idolatrous system they had set up, they would use some to actually build or like preserve these idols, okay, and some would also go to them, those that were running it or setting it up, okay. And so the Lord is saying here, that money is going to return to the hire of an harlot. Now, when you had the Assyrians come, because even up until the time when they came to the northern kingdom, Israel was still in idolatry. When they came there, not only did they take the people captive and destroy their land, and also destroying their idols, but the money, right, they would take and they would then go and dedicate it to their gods. Okay, so that money, which came in as a hire of an harlot, i.e., gained through idolatry, would be taken and basically repurposed for that same thing, because then this foreign nation, in this case the Assyrians, would take that same hire or that money and go and use it to also worship or offer unto their gods or their idols, which was also a form of like harlotry or idolatry. Okay, so all in all it's saying here is in a whole, for the 7th verse, the Lord is going to have these idols be destroyed. All the riches and treasures they gain from it will be taken away from them, right? And used for, in this case, whatever the enemy would see fit, right? So verse 8, it says, therefore I will wail. Now in verse 8, this is switching, like this is Micah's perspective, right? So he's saying this, and he's saying this as a result of the vision or the burden or the future judgment that he had been made privy to that would come upon his people. So as he says, therefore I will wail and howl. I will go stripped and naked. I will make a wailing like the dragons and mourning as the owls. Now, stripped is like barefoot. Naked here doesn't mean that Micah was going to go butt naked. Okay, when reading the scriptures, naked here is referring on to it was something that was signifying mourning, being in a state of mourning. So I'm gonna pull up here. Well, actually, it's already here. So it says here, naked. Here we go. So it says, stripped, ill-clad, used of one who, having taken off his mantle, goes only clad in his tunic. Okay, and so usually when you are mourning, the clothing you have on is not like your regular clothing, right? You would usually, sometimes they would rent it or rip it, or they'll take it off, and then they would put on sackcloth, right? Or just as we read here, just go in their tunic as a sign of mourning. So what Micah is expressing here in the 8th verse is that he was going to mourn, basically, right? And as he says, make a wailing like the dragons. The word there, it's not too definitive, right? It goes into a couple of different things, like I think there's a mention of dinosaurs and so on. Monsters, snakes, serpents, sea monsters, dinosaurs, so here they also have a jackal. But I think the point here is it's some form of a creature that probably has a notable sound, okay, that it makes when either like in trouble or stressed. And Micah is comparing his mourning to that as an emphasis on how distraught he is hearing about this destruction and devastation that would come to Israel. It says here, and mourning as the owls. Verse 9, for her wound is incurable, for it is come onto Judah. So here, what he's saying is this wound, right? Like we read in Isaiah, the 1st chapter, I believe, this wound was basically the state that Israel ended up in of being fully engulfed or wholly engulfed in this idolatrous state that was destroying the people, right? And leading them further and further astray from the Lord, warranting judgment and destruction upon them rather than healing and mercy. So he likens this onto a wound that is incurable, right? Because, like, for example, when you look even today at our people, they're in a state far beyond curing, right? And that's why the Lord is going to have to destroy them, because they can't be cured. They can't be healed. They have to be destroyed and brought back. All right. Saving for the elect. So when you look at some of our people today, you look at them and you're like, these are people are destroyed. You can't fix this kind of people, right? You can't fix some of these Israelites over here. And Micah was feeling the same way, seeing the state that Israel was in. He's like, yeah, they're done. So as he says, her wound is incurable, for it has come onto Judah. So that idolatrous presence, practice, and lifestyle had now permeated into Judah from the northern kingdom, because they were heavily into it, and now it started to become more prevalent in the southern kingdom. As he says, it has come onto Judah. He has come onto the gate of my people, even to Jerusalem. And the he is still referring to this wound, or this engulfing lifestyle of idolatry, as Micah is saying, has now come to the gate of my people, even to Jerusalem. So that started to spread to the southern kingdom. And what that would mean is that they would then have to go through that judgment that the Lord would bring as well. Verse 10, declare. So now from verse 10 on down, Micah starts to use more wordplay, right? More sort of poetic language here, as he is lamenting on behalf of the towns, because the names that are mentioned here are towns or locations in Israel, borderline Gath or the Philistines. But you had Judah, right, had dominion over these towns. So you had Israelites dwelling there. So as he says, declare ye it not in Gath, weep ye not at all. In the house of Opera, roll thyself in the dust. So this first part, declare ye it not in Gath, weep ye not at all, was to say, don't give any sign, right, or indication for those in Gath, which were, heathens, right, to know that this is the state that Israel is in. And why was that? So that they wouldn't have an occasion to rejoice or even try to take advantage of that. And it's a similar sentiment that was mentioned here when you go to the book of 2 Samuel. I believe this was after Saul and Jonathan's death. Yeah. And I think this was David, right, as he said here, tell it not in Gath, publish it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised triumph. See, so it's sort of along those same lines over there, that when you're going through, something negative, you don't want your adversaries to catch wind of it. And now he begins, right, in the house of Ophrah, roll thyself in the dust, which that word Ophrah or opera means house of dust. So it's like a wordplay right there that he is saying. So let's pull it up. All right, Bayath La'ai Parah, which is two words, right? Bayath, which is house, and the what's that? I Parah, which is dust, right? So here it says house belonging to opera or house of dust, and these are the two words right there. So if we look at that latter part, as you can see, it says dry earth dust. So being that the name of the place, or the word or the name of the city, represents that, right? House of dust. That's why he is, like I mentioned, using that wordplay to construct this lamentation, right? To say, like, the people of opera, roll yourself in the dust, right? And that's really just a sign of mourning. Verse 11, pass ye away. And what he does is he basically goes like town by town, mentioning, like, mourn, right? Or get ready, because this destruction is now going to come upon you because you have now been infected by this disease of idolatry and wickedness that was spread from the northern kingdom or from Israel. Pass ye away, thou inhabitant of Saphir, having thy shame naked. Now, the word Saphir means like fair or beautiful, right? Shapayar. It says fair, a place in Judah. And when you look at the root word, right, shapar, it says to be pleasing, to be beautiful, to be fair. Okay, so as he's saying, concerning the people or the inhabitants of Saphir, which is fair or beautiful, pass ye away, you're gonna, be taken into captivity, having thy shame naked, right? So a city that was named or known for beauty and fairness is now going to be sent away naked and ashamed. The inhabitants of Zaanan came not forth in the morning of Bethazel. He shall receive of you his standing. So I'm going to pull this up in the NLT because the wording of the English is a bit clearer there. You get what it's saying. But in a nutshell, it's saying here that you're not going to get support from the inhabitants of Zaanan, right? And their support is going to be taken from you. Okay, so let's pull this up. Or even in the NKJV first, right? Pass by in naked shame, you inhabitants of Shafir. The inhabitant of Zaanan does not go out. Beth Ezel mourns. Its place to stand is taken away from you. NLT, you people in Shafir go as captives into exile, naked and ashamed. The people of Zaanan dare not come outside their walls. The people of Beth Ezel mourn, for their house has no support. Okay, so once again, it's going into, this is saying that you're going to be in trouble. And when that trouble comes, you're not getting any help because everybody's going to be, you're going to have inhabitants of Zaanan that are going to be afraid. They're not going to come out and help you. Support is going to be taken away, right, from Beth Ezel. Verse 12, for the inhabitant of Maroth waited carefully for good, but evil came down from the Lord Yahweh onto the gate of Jerusalem. And when you go into the word Maroth, I believe it means bitter. All right. Marawath, which is Mara, goes back to that origin word, and it means bitterness. So the town that means bitterness were carefully waiting for good, but instead evil, right, which can be likened onto bitterness, is what they ended up receiving, or what they will end up receiving. Now, Micah says this almost like it's past tense, but sometimes the prophets do that because they have seen it happen, right? Even though this is something that will happen in the future, when they have seen it happen, they speak of it as though it has already happened, because meaning it's already been set to happen, right? And it's not going to change. Verse 13, O thou inhabitant of Lachish, bind the chariot to the swift beast. And what this is like a warning to get ready to flee on your fastest horses. Why? Because judgment is coming. She is the beginning of the sin to the daughter of Zion, for the transgressions of Israel were found in thee. So what Micah is saying is, you were one of the first cities to adopt and spread the wickedness, okay, that was similar to what was going on over there in the northern kingdom. As he says, for the transgressions of Israel, the wickedness they were doing there were found in thee. So you started to follow after those ways. Once again, pulling this up in the NLT, harness your chariots and horses and flee, you people of Lachish. You were the first city in Judah to follow Israel in her rebellion, and you led Jerusalem into sin. And so basically harness and flee, because the Lord is going to bring judgment and you're going to get it too. Therefore shalt thou give presents to Moresheth Gath. The houses of Achzib shall be a lie to the kings of Israel. And once again, a poetic play on words here. The name Moresheth Gash or Gath Little tongue twister over there. Means possession of Gath, right? Mawar Rash or Rashath Gath. So possession of Gath. As it says, thou shalt give presents to Moresheth Gath, and the houses of Achzib shall be a lie to the kings of Israel. And I believe Achzib means deceit. At least as they have it here, right? Deceit. So now pulling this up in the NLT, it says, send Pharaoh gifts to Moresheth Gath. There is no hope of saving it. The town of Achzib has deceived the kings of Israel, meaning, or NIV, right? Therefore, you will give parting gifts to Moresheth Gath, the town of Achzib, meaning, which is like symbolizing them being taken away, right? Or parting. The town of Achzib will prove deceptive to the kings of Israel, meaning when the time of destruction comes, right? As the way we read up above, similarly how the standing would be taken away, right? He shall receive of you his standing, meaning that support is not going to be there for you. That's going to be similarly here, right? If in the case of trying to defend yourself or fight back, you wouldn't get that help from Achzib, right? Which would be like a like them being deceptive to you, right? In the sense that as where you might have expected their support, you wouldn't get it. Verse 15, yet will I bring an heir unto thee, O inhabitant of Mareshah. He shall come unto Adullam, the glory of Israel. Now, the heir here is not in the sense of like a king or a ruler per se, but more so in the sense of one to seize or one to take over in a hostile sense. Yarash, to seize, dispossess, take possession of, to impoverish, okay, to cause, to possess, to destroy, to bring to ruin, right? So reading that again, I will bring an heir, and also let's look into the definition of Mareshah. All right, Mara'asha or Mar'asha. It says crest of a hill. And if we look in the root word, place at the head, right? Dominion, head, place, right? So interestingly enough, that place would be the one, as Micah is saying here, that would have one sent to seize it and take it over. He shall come unto Adullam, the glory of Israel. So let's look at this in the NLT. O people of Mareshah, I will bring a conqueror to capture your town, and the leaders of Israel will go to Adullam. NIV, I will bring a conqueror against you who live in Mareshah. The nobles of Israel will flee to Adullam, right? And so that's pretty much what most of the translations end up saying, right? Verse 16, make thee bald and poll thee for thy delicate children. And making yourself bald is once again a sign of mourning. So everything Micah has been saying here, right, from verse 10 on down, is all really just a poetic way of telling the different nations, the different cities and towns in Judah to mourn and to prepare, because you're about to go through hardship, or you're about to suffer judgment at the hand of the Lord, because you have now started to go in the way of Israel, all right, in the way of rebellion, in the way of idolatry, in the way of wickedness. He just says it in a poetic way, plus it's Old English, so that's why using some of these more modern translations make the message a bit clearer. Make thee bald and poll thee for thy delicate children, so mourn over your children. Enlarge thy baldness as the eagle. When you go into the word eagle here, it also goes into one of the definitions there is vulture, okay? Because if you look at a vulture, it's pretty much bald, right? You'll see from like its neck up, it has, some of them have like that red tone, and they just got like that baldness over there. for they are gone into captivity from thee, right? So mourn because your people are going to be made captives, as a form of judgment here. And that brings us to the end of the book of Micah, the first chapter, right? So as we saw, it was highlighting the judgment that would come, starting really with the northern kingdom because of the wickedness that they were doing, mainly idolatry, but also how Judah wouldn't be spared because of them following in the ways of Israel. So with that, Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.